Right, so thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Here we are again. I wanted to round up my discussion on the old Palace of Whitehall and then move on to the Horse Guards, which you can see directly in front of you. But before I do that, there are just one or two things that I need to talk about before we move on. And one of these is the statue to the Ghurka regiments, which has been set up here. And you can see this is a statue of the Ghurkas. We're talking a bit about them. The Ghurkas are Nepalese, and the British armies were very much involved with India in the 1800s and attempted to incorporate Nepal into the British Empire. They were defeated by the local indigenous armed forces, who were the Ghurkas. And in a treaty of 1816, the independence of Nepal was recognized by the British, but nevertheless we went on to recruit the Ghurkas into the British Army, and they always worked to very high standards. They were not only supportive in the British administration of India, but also in the First and Second World Wars and in conflicts like the Falkland Islands. Now, in order to become a Ghurka, what you've got, very high standards. You have 200 people applying for 28,000 places, so the competition is stiff. And once you get in, then there's a very highly disciplined regime which you have to follow. You have to be able to do 70 press-ups in 2 minutes. Otherwise, you're not considered to be fit for service. So anyway, these are the Ghurkas. These are people who contributed so much to the British Army, and that's the reason why they are actually commemorated here. We'll move on and just make our way down to Horse Guards. You can see the rear view of Banqueting House as I walk along. Just right now you can see me. Lucky you. Right, so what I'm doing is I'm heading towards the street we call Whitehall. Rather strange to think that you've got a major thoroughfare that goes through a royal palace, but that was simply the way it all worked out. You have Whitehall, which connects what is now Trafalgar Square, used to be the village of Charing Cross, with Westminster Abbey and the Palace of Westminster further to the south. That's over on our left. But ahead of us we have the Horse Guard. So just explain that. I told you how originally the old Whitehall Palace was the property of Cardinal Wolsey, the chief minister of Henry VIII, and he lost it to King Henry VIII when he failed to get the divorce, and that's when Henry VIII moved in and turned it into a royal palace. Well, Henry VIII was a very athletic man, very fond of sports, and what he did was he created the palace here, and then on the other side of the street, as it were, he started to build a bowling green, cockpit. There was a tilt yard, places where for sport and recreation. Then beyond that you have St James's Park, Green Park and Hyde Park, and these were places where he went hunting. Of course, in fact, there was a hunting ground pretty well over what we now call the inner boroughs of northwest London. Anyway, as we go forward, let me just, you don't want to see me too much forward, you can see the Horse Guards here, and I'll talk a bit about that. I told you, of course, and I think I've repeated it often enough, that the palace burnt down in 1698. All that now remains is the Banqueting House, but because the servants of the kings and queens were used to living in the palace, that's really the reason why it became the centre of our civil service. So as I say, you've got up here over to the north, that's on our right, Trafalgar Square with Nelson's Column, and as we pan round slowly, you will see the southern part of Whitehall, which I will discuss in another video. That will take you down to Westminster Abbey and also to the Houses of Parliament. Now, I've got a red light, so I can't cross. Well, I could, but I can't get knocked down by that lorry. So I'll just wait here like a good little citizen for the lights to change, and then we'll move on. Having done that, there's nothing coming either way. Let's cross over now while we get the chance. Oh, that's naughty. So just before we come onto the other side, another little statue here which is worth paying attention to. This is Spencer Compton Cavendish, the 8th Duke of Devonshire. Born in 1833, he died in 1908, and he was the leader of a political party called the Liberal Unionists. Now, the Liberal Party was in Victorian Britain, were very much in favour of national movements, and they supported Republican tendencies on the continent. And many of the members of the Liberal Party in Britain at that time also supported the cause of Irish independence, or at least what they called Home Rule for Ireland. It was given the Irish a large say of involvement in their own affairs, and there were some members of the Liberal Party who objected to that, and they were called the Liberal Unionists, and this was the man who led them. And we had a man called Gladstone, who attempted the Irish Home Rule Bill in 1886, and that was defeated in Parliament, and then the Conservatives came back into office, and there was a general election. The Conservatives won the largest numbers of members of Parliament, but not entirely. They didn't have an overall majority, and they were supported by the Liberal Unionists, and eventually the Liberal Unionists became part of the Conservative Party. That's why the Conservative Party is known as the Conservative and Unionist Party. But it's all down to this man, Spencer Compton Cavendish, the 8th Duke of Devonshire. Now I'm going to cross because there's a green light and we don't have all that much time. Right, so ahead of us, as you can now see, we've got the banqueting house. You can see the street on either side, as I've already shown you. And in 1532, they built the Holbein Gate. It wasn't so much a gate, but a bridge over the street for the convenience of people like Henry VIII and the other kings and queens, as a place where they could walk from one side of the palace to the other without having to come out in the street and mingle with hoi polloi. So the Holbein Gate was built in 1532. It's a place where Hans Holbein, the artist, where he worked, and he resided there for a while, and eventually it was pulled down in the early 18th century for street widening. Now what I want to do is cross over, and again we've got the... Can I do it? I think I can actually. Yeah, I can, just about. Right, let's move briskly. And what we're doing is going over to Horse Guards. Now, the whole point about the Horse Guards is this was at one time the headquarters of the British Army, and not only just for Britain, but also for what eventually became the British Empire. And that's why it's important. All this has now changed, of course. We can cross over with the light, so let's do that now. Come back onto the west side of Whitehall, and we can look across the way again. The bank has this marvellous building, which I'm sad to say is closed at the present moment, but it's going to open up in a few months' time, and when it does, what I want to do is get inside, and I want to do a video on the ceiling, which was painted by Rubens. It's a spectacularly marvellous ceiling, which is certainly worth going to have a look at. But I was talking about the Horse Guards. So, palace burns down in 1698. Of course, like all palaces, they were defended by a detachment, a regiment, and that's why they're here. They never got the message about the palace burning down, so that's why they're here every day. They're on duty from 11 o'clock. There's a ceremony of changing of the guard. Actually, this changing of the guard is a lot more decorative, if you like. lot more ceremonial than you would get otherwise in the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. There's something going on here. Oh yes, the clock is striking, so there's something going to go on very shortly. You've got 7 regiments in the Household Division, and you've got 2 of them are cavalry regiments, and you've got 5 infantry regiments, or the foot guards. We've got the horse guards here, and the 2 regiments are the Blues and Royals, who are on duty at the present moment, and they alternate with the Life Guards. Now the Life Guards wear red and white uniform. These soldiers wear a blue and white uniform. The original regiment from which this regiment is descended was part of Oliver Cromwell's new model army, and that was created in 1650. So originally they were part of a Republican government, but they went over and became loyal to King Charles II and have been loyal to the throne ever since. The Life Guards were a special regiment that was recruited by King Charles II in 1658. That's not when he was in Britain. He was actually on the continent organising his return, and so that's why these regiments are very, very ancient and very highly respected. To point out to you that they are professional soldiers. Some people come away with the idea that they're just actors who are waiting for trying to sort of fill in time while they're looking for a job on the West End stage. That is not the case. You have to be very highly trained in order to become soldier, and especially to come into a regiment like this, which is extremely prestigious. There's something going on out there, yes. So what's happening now is one regiment is, or some soldiers are now going off duty, and another one is coming in. This is called a box change, and these happen every hour or so, and they will be on duty for an hour, and they will be there, as I say, to protect a palace which burnt down over 300 years ago. Now, again, to point out that this regiment has been closely involved with many of the engagements of the British Empire over so many hundreds of years. In fact, very recently, the soldiers from this regiment were involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, they're not going to be unduly upset or alarmed if you should take photographs. However, it is not a good idea to get too close to them or to do anything that is likely to distract them from their duties. So you're best advised to keep a respectful distance. You can see they've actually drawn these lines. It's not a good idea to try and touch the horses. They do bite, and they kick and they bite, and some people will go try and do that, but it's best just to leave them alone. As I say, treat them with deep respect. So what I propose to do now is move round when I can. Unfortunately, there is no, I can't get in there because already there's some action going on. Maybe I can just see through the railings. Probably not. I think what I may have to do is finish this video and start another one in a few minutes' time. So I think that's on behold what I will do.